So like I said, this is our 2018 Aware. It looks a lot like last year's. A few minor changes, but the city policy is the same. They're still very concerned and want to make sure that you guys have a safe work-like environment. Here are some of the topics we're going to cover. We're just going to talk about it. We're not teaching on all these. We're just making sure we have an understanding. This is broken down into 3 groups. So in this room, we have a variety. We have people that are managers, supervisors, and employees. So you fall into one of these 3 groups. Here's some of the responsibilities you will have in your group. So management. You're going to authorize this program. You're going to try to get funding for this program. You're going to hold all the employees accountable to keep up with the training that they have. So if they're taught to use certain safety precautions, as management, you're going to make sure that you do that. Supervisors, you're going to ensure that everybody's trained for the jobs that they do. Because we have employees in all different departments that have different trainings that they need. You as a supervisor need to make sure that they have the training they need for that job that they're going to do. You also need to respond appropriately when they bring a safety concern to you. This is a big one. So a lot of people feel like they don't want to bring up a safety concern because they don't want to get picked on, they don't want to get teased. We let them know that as a supervisor, that's your job to take care of making sure that that safety concern is looked at. And then also ensuring that everybody's knowledgeable about this program. Because I know everybody would be here today, right? If your supervisors didn't say, we're doing this today? Yeah. All right, employees. Be knowledgeable about the hazards that you work with. So you guys are doing the same job every day. If something changes, make sure you get the training you need. If you haven't, bring that up to your supervisor. Using the appropriate procedures. So if you are taught to use certain PPE, like you're usually told to use certain hearing protection or eye protection, that's your job to make sure that you're using it. And then here's a big one. I always pause on this one. If you guys get injured at work, when do we report that? Immediately. So we don't wait 3 weeks. We don't try to fix it ourselves and watch videos online on how to correct that, swollen ankle or whatever the deal is. We want to report it right away so that the process starts. If you wake up the next day and you're feeling just fine, okay, great. But at least that process has started. So if you need a follow-up, if you need it looked at, you're going to get that injury taken care of. If you have any suggestions for this program, make sure to bring it up to your supervisor or your safety committee. Do you guys have safety committees in your groups? All right, you all should. And if you don't, it's your supervisor. And you can report anything to your supervisor, and then of course attending these meetings so that you guys learn all this good stuff, right? Like I said, this is a reminder, so this is stuff you probably already know. We're going to start out with a video that probably covers everything, and I wish that I could just play that and then go home. But they make me talk after. We'll see if we get that up.
People cause accidents. To be more exact, people not paying attention or doing something that they shouldn't be doing causes accidents. To put it another way, accidents result from varying degrees of carelessness, sloppiness, negligence, inattention, neglect, and ignorance. Accidents also happen where 2 things are found: unsafe acts and unsafe conditions. Unsafe conditions occur when there is a failure to identify, control, remediate, or train properly against a hazard. Even though there can be multiple human causes, accident investigations will always identify the human failure to correct the hazard. Some unsafe conditions are easy to spot. Finding others needs a closer inspection. For example, liquid on a walking surface is an unsafe condition, but you won't see it if you aren't looking where you are stepping. People create the majority of unsafe conditions. Mother Nature can create conditions, but she gives us plenty of warning signs. If it's cold and wet, or raining or snowing, we should be aware of walking hazards. No matter what nature is up to, we can be aware of it and guard against it. However, unsafe conditions created by people are often harder to find. overloaded circuits, unguarded machinery, unchained cylinders, altered safeties, blocked fire extinguishers, blocked exits, curled up edges of mats or carpets, spills, poor lighting, unsanitary conditions, speeding, damaged tools, and inappropriately stored chemicals like solvents and gasoline, and poor housekeeping are all examples of unsafe conditions created by people. If you see an unsafe condition and ignore it, you just made it more likely that someone will fall victim, perhaps even yourself. Unsafe acts create unsafe conditions. Unsafe acts are things like failing to properly do a job, failing to see hazards, or taking unneeded risks. For example, speeding up to make the yellow light, using tools in wrong ways, or using damaged or defective tools, not using proper personal protective equipment, ignoring the safety data sheet for chemicals you are using, or deliberately violating safety rules and procedures. How many unsafe acts can you spot today? Which ones are you doing? The worst kind of unsafe act is deliberately creating an unsafe condition. Have you done anything to make the job more risky for you or for others? Although it is difficult to foresee every condition or potential hazard, it's hard to find an accident that could not have been prevented. The person injured may not have caused the conditions that caused the injury, but something they did or something another person did directly led to the incident. The facts from accident investigations are revealing. 99.5% of accidents are caused by people's behaviors. Some don't do it deliberately. Some don't do it because they just did something stupid. Others cause accidents because they think they can do it without getting hurt, or they don't think about the consequences of their actions. Some are in a hurry. They allow themselves to become distracted and are not paying attention. One thing to remember, you can make the same mistake many times without anything bad happening. I always did it this way, and nothing ever happened until today. Over time, you come to believe that some unsafe conditions or acts are okay because you have no evidence to the contrary. Whatever we do, our job is to identify as many errors as we can and correct them through education, process changes, equipment modifications, or any other way needed to ensure that we all go home safe at the end of each day. Thanks for watching and have a safe day.
Is everybody familiar with this page here, where it's located, how to get to the city intranet? All right. So if you want to look up and you have the health and safety information, they got the tab there. You can pull that up. Lots of great reading material. But you can certainly see a lot of the changes and things we've added. There's all different programs out there. And then we have the city emergency informations up there too. So last year, I put this button up here that this was new for safety concerns. Do you guys remember that from last year? Where the big red arrow is pointing? All right, think about that. We'll come back to that here in a second. All right, identifying hazards. How do we do that? So we have inspections. We hire outside sources. We have city staff. We have safety committees. We have all different people in the city that help us identify hazards, right? We even have city staff. So who in here is city staff? Everybody. So if you guys see a safety concern, whose job is it to let somebody know? All of us. We're all safety officers, right? So certainly let's let somebody know. The city does work really hard, though. They have things in place to try to catch it ahead of time, but certainly let them know. Reporting it. Any employee can report an unsafe condition. Who do we report that to? Supervisors, right? Supervisors, that's their job to take care of that. There's also another way to report it. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. But remember, safety starts with you guys. All right, so the safety concern information. If you want to put something on there, you can go to the city intranet. You can put it on there as a safety concern. It will ask for your department. It will ask for the safety concern. It will ask for different information here. You don't have to put your name in there if you're wanting to do something and not let them know who it is. But what I will say is if you don't put your name in there for us to follow up with you, one, we can't kind of let you know what we did. But two, if you don't really do a great description of what that safety concern is, sometimes we cannot fix that safety hazard if it's not in that description. So make sure that if you're not putting your name in there, be really descriptive of what the safety concern is. So some of you guys might ask, what are some safety concerns that have been put in there? So recently we've had things such as, I know we had a safety concern on a sidewalk because we had ice building up from water coming off of a roof. So I know we had a diverter that was put up to kind of try to help with that. What was some other ones that came up, Mike?
Snowbanks in front of City Hall, blocking the line of sight when you were pulling out of the parking lot.
Yep, so traffic concern, right? You can't pull out, you can't see down the road. Is that a safety concern? Yeah. Is that something that we can correct? We have the equipment to do it, right? So those are some recent ones that have been put in here. Certainly you can let your supervisor know, but certainly this is another means to get that safety concern out there. Any questions on this? All right, we already know the answer, but when do we report injury? Right away. All right, so if we were going to do the paperwork for reporting an injury or an accident, your supervisor should know where this is at. They can walk you through it. You guys certainly don't have to fill out the paperwork before you go to the hospital to get everything corrected, but we want to make sure all this paperwork is filled out properly. Supervisors, if you have it saved on a flash drive or have it saved on your hard drive, things have been updated. We want to make sure you're going to the same site to pull this information. So don't be using your flash drive. For accidents, you want to go on here, pull up the paperwork you need. If it's a first report of injury, you're going to have your form. The supervisor is going to have a form he needs to fill out. If it's involved with a vehicle, you're going to have another form for the accident. So there's different paperwork that has to be filled out for this process. That's all going to be found right here under Forms and Documents. Corvell. Corvell is going to kind of be the company that walks through this with you. Here's some suggestions they have for where to go. Of course, for non-emergency injury, after hours, and they recommend Woodwinds because it's right here in Woodbury. Certainly, if your injury states that you need to go to Regions or somewhere else, you don't need to go where they're saying here. These are just the local places they're suggesting. But they're saying notify your supervisor, call the Corvell line, complete the first report of injury. Understandably, some of those things sometimes fall in different order, but make sure everything's done in a timely manner. Any questions on first report of an injury? No? All right. So we're going to talk about some general safety rules that you guys all know and you might remember from the past because we've kind of kept the same ones here. But it should go without saying, right, that we shouldn't be fighting, horseplaying at work. We want to make sure it's a safe work environment, not only for you guys, but for your partners. With the exception of police officers, I know in Minnesota, conceal and carry is kind of a big thing in this day and age. If you have a conceal and carry license, you are a city employee. Unless you're a police officer, you should not be carrying on city property. So does that mean that you come in on your day off and you're going to City Hall to do some personal stuff that you guys can carry? You're still a city employee. So I just want you to be aware of what the city policy is. Any questions on that? And try to keep everything clean, put everything away when you're done working with equipment. Get it back where it needs to go. The big thing is cords. We've been noticing in cubicles. If people want, another extension cord or plug in a lamp or whatever they're bringing in from home. If you need a cord or something added, that might be something you need to do a work order for versus putting an extension cord across the floor and taping it down with duct tape so people don't trip on it. We don't want to have that. So just when you go back to your work area, look around. If there's something that needs to be corrected, now's a good time to do it. Emergency equipment. You've heard me use the example in the past of, a pull station covered up by a shelf. If we see that or we see some safety device covered up, let's make sure that we either correct it, let somebody know in the appropriate area, or you guys got that cool tab now, right? You can go in there and put that information in and it can get corrected as well. So, if you guys work in City Hall, and you see something that's a safety concern over here, Do you think that's something we should say something about? Or do we say, we're in City Hall, that's our only building we got to worry about? No, let's try to be aware of, we're in a city building, we want to make sure it's safe, so pass that on. These are the updated pictures for the year, of course. These are examples of what not to do, so we're not promoting this. But yeah, I don't think I'd trust the hydraulics just for the shade. All right. OSHA Form 300A. Does everybody know what this is? It is. Perfect. So where is this located? So I know for public safety, we have it in the lunchroom. It's going to be a separate form or printout for each department. So like City Hall won't be the same as public safety. City Hall, do you guys know where yours is located? Lunchroom? Okay, that's maybe the most common place. So this form is something that's going to start when we start the paperwork for the first report of injury. This is going to give OSHA information, and this is going to kind of give us a gauge of what departments are getting injured or ill, how it's happening, to kind of try to help better the next year so it doesn't occur. So this is not something separate that you guys are going to fill out, but just by starting that process, it ends up on this form. Like I said, each department, theirs will show up for their department. So City Hall, you're not going to see police and fire in your numbers. Police and fire is not going to see Eagle Valley in their numbers. So that's kind of how that works. Any questions on that form? All right, use of machinery and equipment. So everybody in here has different jobs. So I kind of look around the room. I got people from City Hall, from staff over here. I got some public safety people. If you guys think that you need training on equipment that you're not, so let's say somewhere else you work, you're a forklift driver. And you always want to drive a forklift here. I don't know where we have a forklift here. But if you're not signed off to drive a forklift here, should you be driving that forklift? No. But if you really think you should be, who do we talk to? Supervisor. And he'll probably tell you no, but if he tells you yes, he'll run you through the process and get you signed off on that, if you truly need that. So the same goes for like the fire department. We have our ladder truck. We go through a certain process to get signed off on certain equipment. If we have a firefighter that's coming through that's not signed off on a certain piece of equipment, he doesn't operate that equipment until he's signed off. So it's the same in every department. So even if you work somewhere else where maybe you use a chainsaw on a regular basis and then you come here and you want to use a chainsaw, no, that's not how that works. So make sure that we do the process that we need to do. Any questions on that? All right. PPE, personal protective equipment. So that's the equipment that we're given to keep us safer, right? And yeah, if everybody was mopped up, I probably wouldn't be standing next to him in his shorts and a t-shirt. But so what are some examples that you guys use in the room here? Not all at once, but give me a couple. Hard hats, all right. Gloves, eye protection. Safety vests, that's a big one. So on the highway, if you're out on the highway, if you're a CSO, police officer, EMS, or on any roadway, we should make sure we're wearing that safety vest. That's an easy one to forget. What do we do if we hop out of the vehicle and we see that our partner's not wearing a safety vest? Let him know, or hand him one. It works out great. You hand him one, he puts it on. So work as a team. Make sure that if you have eye protection or hearing protection and you notice that it's scratched up and that it's not functioning right, that you let somebody know to get that replaced. Because your personal eye protection, hearing protection, that's not getting inspected by anybody but you. So I've had people say, well, my safety glasses are so scratched I can't see out of them, so I'm not going to wear them. Okay. The city's happy to get you safety glasses at work. Make sure your supervisor knows. There's more than here. I don't know, do we have any people that are trimming trees for the city here? No? Not in this group? So I think they wear chaps, steel-toed boots. So make sure it's all in good working order. And these are examples of what not to do. All right, lockout, tagout. So you guys might not see this a lot, but we got to talk about it quick. This is an electrical panel, it's locked out, and you'll see 2 locks on here. So this tells me 2 people are working down line on this electrical line. If you saw, you might see 5 locks on there if there's 5 people working on it. If you did not put a lock on there, you should not be removing it. Sometimes it's just a zip tie and a tag, so it's easy to cut. If you didn't put that zip tie on there, there's a reason that gas or electric or whatever it is locked out. Look at who it is. If it's something you need unlocked, contact that individual, but don't be cutting it or opening it up yourself. Confined space. Anybody in here trained for confined space? All right. You trained with Woodbury? All right. So, Woodbury Fire, we don't train and carry the equipment that we need for confined space anymore because it's certain training and certain equipment that we need that we can get from St. Paul a lot quicker. So I know our streets department, they know that they have to do self-rescue and they have to do certain things until we get the staff there that we need. If you're not trained for confined space, I always think of the CSO as getting the ducks out of the sewer. You see all the pictures? Think about that. Make sure you're being safe. You're not going somewhere where there's not air quality that you need. We need to be safe. Because we have an outside company that we call in from St. Paul. They're a quick response team that's going to help us with confined space. And then, of course, I got the cubicle because a lot of people say that their workspace feels like a confined space, but in reality, probably not. All right, workplace violence. So we've been talking about this a lot more in the last several years. What is it? It can be violence by strangers, customers, clients, co-workers. It includes all these different things. It could be threats, harassment, intimidation, bullying, stalking, domestic violence. So we want to make sure that you guys are aware of what's going on around you and you guys take action. Because we want to prevent it. We don't want to end up like this guy here with his head in the sand, right? So you guys are aware of your coworkers. You're aware of people that come in from the outside that maybe something seems different about when they're coming in. You can certainly report that. If something doesn't seem right, I know we have different things throughout the city where we can call and let the police department know. They can come and check it out. Also be aware that a lot of you guys drive vehicles that say City of Woodbury on it, right? So if somebody has an issue with the city, they might not realize, okay, that's not a police car. They just see City of Woodbury. So if something seems strange or something, report it. Let a supervisor know. Or dial 911 if you have to report it. You guys remember the video we watched in the past? We're going to watch that real quick. It's the short one of the 2.
It may feel like just another day at the office, but occasionally, life feels more like an action movie than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference. Run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important, you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your number one priority.
Stop that guy! Stop that guy! Hey!
Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911.
Yes, we're 002 Washington. Help us! Help us!
If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. Try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter. Your actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
So I know sometimes we've called from a certain building and it will say it's coming from a different part of the city. It might say the main building. We've even had calls for the fire department in this building and we're in the building and we're asking dispatch, what part of the building was that complaint in? So be specific, let them know what part of the building you're in, and evidently 9 and 911 works. So good tip, thanks. Any questions on this? All right, so airborne, bloodborne pathogens. We got to talk about this, but this is not a good thing. We want to make sure that we wear our PPE so we don't get it through a cut in our skin, through our mucous membranes, eyes, nose, or mouth. So I know you guys aren't really dealing with a lot of people that are maybe doing first aid with them. I know we have some public safety people in here. But why is this important? So if somebody comes in and you guys need to use a first aid kit, what should you do? You want to make sure that if you don't have gloves on, you're handing them maybe the 4x4 so they can hold it on themselves. You're trying to not contaminate yourself. Certainly put gloves on, go back to your stations and you guys look at your first aid kits. See if they have gloves that fit you. Hopefully there's a little baggie in there that says large, medium, small. So you have gloves that fit you guys and you have the equipment you need in there. But if you don't, let somebody know. It's a good time of the year to do it. But this is a good reminder for us to always use our PPE that we should be using. Right to know. We have the right to know the hazards that we deal with every day. I know Eagle Valley is going to have more hazards. Probably the mechanics are going to have more chemicals that they deal with. What are the different routes of exposure? They can absorb, injection, or ingestion. So they're all serious. We don't want any of them to happen. But what's the difference between acute and chronic? So one's a little quicker and one's more long-term, right? So I've shared that story about my kids using the inner tubes at the water park, and they had an allergic reaction to the chemical that was put on there to clean it in the past. Do you remember that? So that would be an acute. So when we went, cleaned them up, that rash went away. I wasn't happy as a parent, but then I knew to always wash down those tubes before my kids were on there. Chronic's going to be something more long-term. So that could even be hearing loss. We want to make sure that we're using the PPE that we need to. So hearing protection, wearing the proper PPE so we don't end up with chronic issues. Any questions on this? All right, chemical first aid. So I would suggest if you're using a chemical out at Eagle Valley Golf Course or investigations, I know there's different chemicals you guys might use, make sure that if it's something you use all the time, look at the first aid ahead of time. Look at what PPE you should be using. So that if you get some on you, that's not the time to try to figure out, am I supposed to just rinse it off? What am I supposed to do? But if you do get a product on you, you can certainly look on the container if it says it on there. If you're in doubt and it's a powder, take off that clothing that it's on. Try to brush as much off before you put any water on there. You don't want to activate that. If you want, you can also look on the MSDS sheets. We're going to talk about that, and that will show you kind of the safety information you need to know there. You remember we talked about the SDS sheets? This is the best part of the class. Everybody loves talking about MSDS sheets and SDS sheets. So it kind of changed over to the new system where it's going to be pictographs. This is all available online, and also we have these books. Do you guys know where these are around the department at all? Do we have any mechanics in here? Yep, online, and we'll have them hard copy a few places. But online is going to be the most up-to-date, and we're going to be able to hold that information for many years past when we're carrying that chemical. So if you were exposed to something, we'll have the record for years down the road. So 2016 brought us the new globally harmonized system. So the SDS sheets is going to have pictographs. So they're going to look like this. So if you pick one up, you should be able to look at it and see, okay, that's flammable, that's a corrosive. You can look at it more quickly. If it's written in another language, you should still be able to identify what the hazards are. And now they're always going to be in the same order. So they're going to have the 16 categories. They're going to have the box for each category. So if there's no information for that box, it will just be a blank box, but it will be there. And where are these located? You guys remember? All right. We keep going back to the same page. So if you want to search for something, you can pull up the search. You can type in what you want. I know we talk about bleach. You can put in bleach. It'll pull up the MSDS sheet that we have on bleach. You can also search by department. So you could type in Eagle Valley Golf Course. You could see all the chemicals they have listed. You could look at public safety. You can see all the chemicals they have listed there. If you work in that department and you see that there's a chemical you're using that's not listed, you can also go on here and put in a request for that to be added. Or if you see that there's a chemical you guys haven't used in a year and it's still on there, you can archive it by requesting that through the supervisor on the same page. So the MSDS sheet for bleach will look something like this. Tell you the product. We're not going to cover all the blocks, but we'll talk about a couple important ones. Under health and hazard information, it's going to tell us our first aid. So eye contact. We're going to want to rinse our eyes 15 to 20 minutes, remove contact lenses, contact a physician. So kind of talk you through that. Now, is it a good time to be trying to look this up as we got that chemical on us? Probably not the best time. So make sure if you're working with a chemical on a regular basis, you're looking that up ahead of time. This will talk about the PPE that we should be wearing. So for bleach, you've heard me say in the past, it says to wear safety goggles and wear rubber gloves. So I know everybody at home when you're using bleach is wearing safety glasses, right? Yeah. So that's what it says we need because it's worried about the splash factor. Talks about spills, how to dispose of it. For the fire department, if you guys want to look up that information, certainly it tells us if there's a fire hazard. So that's not all the blocks on there, but that's the main ones that we're going to look at. Any questions on MSDS sheets or SDS sheets? I know I covered them really fast, but this is just a review, right? All right. So fire and severe weather. So, City Hall, we get a fire alarm goes off. Where are we going to go?
Meeting place.
Where's our meeting place for City Hall?
Light pole.
What's that, light pole? Flagpole? I don't know, I'm not at City Hall. Well, if we don't know, your supervisor can let you know at the end of the day, but I think it's outside, right? All right, so is that a good time? Is everybody still awake? Yeah. So is that a good time to go home? No? Because the fire department and police department show up and they say to your supervisor or whoever's in charge, is everybody out of the building? And they say, no, John's still in there. Okay, so now what are we going to do? We're going to go search and rescue. We're going to look for John when we should be dealing with maybe some other things. So make sure that you check out with who you need to when you meet at the light pole or wherever your meeting place is before you guys are cut loose. So your supervisor or whoever's in charge that day needs to cut you loose. We're not going to know who should be in the building. Severe weather. So if we get a storm that comes through and the sirens are going off, is that the time we should all run out in the parking lot and drive home quickly? No, it's probably a little too late by then, right? So we want to make sure that we're staying inside the building, away from windows in the center, and each building should kind of have a designated area. So I hate to pick on City Hall, but do you guys know where that is? You're shaking your head yes? Okay, good. So go to that designated area. Public safety. You guys are probably all going to be out during the severe weather because that seems to be the thing. Make sure that you're just aware, CSOs, be aware that you can stop by at any fire station or any of the buildings if you need a shelter in place. But in the same regard, communicate with your supervisor to let them know where you're at so that you're accounted for. Any questions on that? Any questions on anything? Did I go too fast for anyone? All right, thanks for listening to me for another year. You guys have a good day.